He said a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again, next to the Easter Bunny.
Voter ID. Everybody knows now it's an 80-20 issue. 80% of people support voter ID, 20% don't.
The only way that Democrats are winning is because there's this rampant voting by people who are not citizens.
All right, welcome back to the Independent Voter Podcast. Oh, man, there's a lot going on in this world. Yeah, a lot going on. Let's just jump right into it. Kara, what do you got for us today?
A new poll from David Binder Research says that Steve Hilton and Swalwell are in the lead. It was commissioned by a super PAC who's supporting Swalwell. So it does show Hilton in first place with 22% of the vote. It looks like he's maybe starting to consolidate the GOP.
We're talking about
base.
the California governor's
polls,
race,
right?
Are
like they're conducted by like somebody has a vested interest in the race. Like it's so easy to bias these. So how do we even trust? Like you wonder how we trust these polls.
I think
I can design questions to make Mickey Mouse in first place.
I think that's the most fascinating thing I've seen about the polling in the California governor's race so far is that when you look at the New York Times, how they've listed all the polls, the IVP poll is the only nonpartisan poll right now. Every other poll has been commissioned by a party. It's been commissioned by a candidate. It's been commissioned by a specific interest group that has like some invested
interest group. We have a vested interest in all voters participating.
Well, that's certainly true. Yeah. But certainly IVP is the only nonpartisan poll currently showing how voters feel about this race.
And we're about to do another one, right, Ethan?
Apparently, yeah, we are. That's right. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while now. We want to get our another listing on the New York Times, so we better make sure that I write the article. Right?
Ethan's a little greedy now.
Ethan has a big head because he's written one article and it got picked up by the New York Times.
Well, to be fair, it is pretty cool. I would say it's a slight flex, is what.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna put my Supreme Court certificate on the desk, and you can look at it every day.
Speaking of flexes, though, it looks like Steve Hilton got the endorsement of Donald Trump yesterday, day before yesterday.
He did.
I mean, that certainly could help him with Republicans. A couple of weekends ago, I had lunch with my family. I met them for lunch, and it was my parents and my sister and her kids. And my parents, they asked me, is it true that California could elect a Republican governor this year? And I told them, it's possible, but it's extremely unlikely. And I said, when you look at the polling for this race, when you look at how the vote is currently split, you're looking at how the party base is split right now. The most consistent polling or the consistent number with all these polls is that a quarter of the electorate still remains undecided. And, lo and behold, over a quarter of the electorate in California are no party preference or independent voters. So now independent voters are just waiting to see how they feel about this race. And ultimately, while you see two Republicans currently in the frontrunner spot, it's possible that at the end of the day, two Democrats could advance.
This is what's so sad about the state of journalism, right? You have all these polls. First, they're all conducted by partisan interest or somebody's specific campaign or independent committee, right? But then, they do this analysis and they don't go into the crosstabs. I mean, I think we're the only people not only publish the crosstabs, we have an interactive map you can click around and see. And it doesn't take that much research to look at it and be like, the prospect of this is so ridiculous because all the Republicans and the NPP Republican leaners have picked their candidate, right? So it's rarely there's all these undecideds in there that have this large field, right? Yeah. And haven't and they're not gonna vote for Steve Hilton or Chad Bianco.
Yeah,
that's not to cast anything on them personally. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is not going to happen, Chad, is that you don't think, and actually last week Steve Peace said that it's basically not going to happen that the two Republicans are going to take the top two spots in this coming up top two primaries.
It's not going to happen. It makes a great news story, and it makes you have, this is what's sad. You have people like George Skelton and stuff who've been around for a long time and everything, but they're not doing the journalism they're supposed to be doing.
Like, I was going to say,
the case in point of that is that the only story you're hearing as far as the Midwest or even on the East Coast is this very doomsday rhetoric from the Democratic Party that, 2 Republicans could end up in the November race for governor.
And they're pushing it, Chad, because the Democrats have an agenda to try to narrow their field. So they're going to use the prospect of 2 Republicans getting in, which they must know is probably impossible, to try to narrow the field and even to try to get Democrats, their own fellow Democrats, to drop out of the race so that there's some consolidation behind a candidate. And yeah, everybody's got their own agenda in this one, right? So
right. And then there's another agenda to get rid of the nonpartisan primary altogether because they want to close the primaries like they have in other states, right? Those agendas coming together, which ironically, that's also the agenda of, the more partisan factions of the Republican Party.
Right. I tell people that the people who benefit most from, if by some unlikelihood that 2 Republicans advance to the November election, the people who benefit most from that are Democrats because that fuels into their agenda of wanting to get rid of the nonpartisan open primary system.
Well, not Democrats generally, the partisan Democrats. There's lots of Democrats that fear that over anything else.
Right.
So more to come. Lots going on in that California governor's race with Eric Swalwell in particular. There's just big rumors, spreading like wildfire across the internet that there's going to be some women that are going to come forward. And Eric Swalwell has taken sort of the unusual step of saying, that these allegations are completely baseless, sort of trying to get ahead of it. He says, I don't want there to be any questions in the minds of Californians. He said everything that he's seen so far, or his staffers have said everything that they've seen so far on the internet about these women coming forward to claim that there was something inappropriate that went on with their relationship with Eric Swalwell is completely baseless. And they called it a false, outrageous rumor. This is probably, though, not what you want people to be talking about in the days before a very competitive California primary coming up on June the 2nd. But, interesting that he chose the tactic of trying to get out in front of it, and we'll see what happens. Everybody's watching because it looks like Swalwell's kind of really battling it out with Mahan and Katie Porter and Tom Steyer at this point.
It's an interesting dynamic there. And the other interesting, stuff, we got this voter ID thing going on in California.
Mm-hmm.
Which we're going to be pulling on this, but this is going to be very interesting in California because you got this clean voter ID bill, right? It's what's going to happen, Kara.
I don't know if people will think it's going to be clean. Before we switch right to voter ID, I did want to let you guys know that a judge rejected the Green Party's candidate from appearing on the ballot at all. And I was like, why? And Cal Matters is reporting that the reason why his name is Butch Ware, Rudolph Butch Ware. He's an associate professor of history at UC Santa Barbara. He's a Green Party candidate. He wants to be the governor. And the judge has kicked him off the ballot because he didn't provide 5 years of his tax returns. And I didn't know that California has this law which says that if you want to run for governor, you have to provide 5 years of tax returns. It's like extraordinary, but I mean, great law. I think. But anyway, this guy is sort of caught in the fallout from passing that law. But yeah, we can talk about
that would be the Green Party candidate. Like that was denied.
I mean, did they ask him for it and then he didn't send it in, or he just didn't know?
Maybe he didn't even.
Maybe he just didn't know.
He knew. He sent in what he could, but it was deemed by the Secretary of State to be incomplete, so he gets kicked off altogether because his submission was incomplete. But gosh, that's a lot of tax returns that are on file right now. That there's quite a lot going on at the national level, huh? I mean, yesterday there was going to be a huge escalation of the war that was going to happen.
Yeah, the stock market's up like 5,000 points today. No, it's like 1,500 or something like that.
Is it really up 1,500 points already? Amazing.
It was at one point.
It's incredible, like oil and the stock market, the price of oil and the stock market, how those two things are working together and how they just are the volatility is wild, right? Just based on, one man's mid-morning musings on Truth Social. Like, wow.
Totally. It is literally ruled by Truth Social. And what's interesting is, like, you see the actual post on Truth Social, and then you go to the other social media accounts, and they have it formatted like it's this amazing statement, coming out of like the speechwriters or something, but it's literally just text by the exact copy and paste of his tweet is like looking like this official statement with, some of his weird capitalizations removed. And it's just, what world are we living in where, we're making negotiations through an online platform? It's pretty wild, I would say.
It's a crazy world we live in, but that is the world we live in now. Don't we have peace in the Middle East now?
I don't think so. I think Israel's still firing on Lebanon. Allegedly, Lebanon's not included in the ceasefire. So, the Israelis are mad at Netanyahu for allowing Trump to do this. There's all sorts of stuff still going on here. The Strait of Hormuz is not open yet. This is just essentially the musings of one man who wants the strait to be open because he wants the stock markets to go up because he told his friends. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I can't make any allegations related to that, but I'm just saying that peace in the Middle East has not occurred yet.
I'll tell you that, the other thing that hasn't occurred yet is that there is still not a deal to fund DHS. Mike Johnson standing up at the National Republican Congressional Committee's annual fundraising dinner at Washington's Union Station. He gave this beautiful new Golden Eagle Award to President Trump, but not a word about all the Coast Guard crews that are running counter-narcotics operations in the Gulf right now. Rescue swimmers, people who are being hunted by the Iranian military in the Gulf right now. The U.S. Coast Guard is still not being paid by the American government. It's been 50 days.
To put it into context, folks are listening at home. Think about it. Like, they're not even discussing this. As we're talking about these wars and all this stuff and everything going on, you have like the people defending our country at the coast and everything who are stopping narcotics and things are not being paid.
Yeah. Since February 14th, Chad, since Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day.
And, God forbid, a natural disaster happens that wipes out a town or something, and FEMA is not getting funded either as a result of this lack of DHS funding. So it's
also, isn't the FEMA director is teleporting right now? Did you see that story?
God, Ethan, yes. What is that about? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, this guy, he's pretty high up at FEMA. I don't know his exact position, but there's a whole story about how he's claiming that he got magically teleported into, what was it? It's somewhere, into like a Waffle House. He's saying
house.
Divine intervention. He teleported into a Waffle House. And then later on in the story he said, it happened to happen while I was under cancer treatment. So this guy is literally claiming that he clearly, what happened is he blacked out on some kind of cancer treatment drugs. This is what I'm thinking of, Kara, and he ended up in this Waffle House, but he's going out there telling the public that he teleported there. And this is the director of emergency response.
Yes,
well, no, if you live in the South, like that is divine intervention. If you're getting teleported into a Waffle House,
what better place? If you blacked out, where else would you want to wind up? But a Waffle House.
I mean, that's true. I'm just wondering if FEMA is, they're just going to sit there and request divine intervention if there's, like you were saying, an actual emergency hits.
Think about this. Your house gets devastated. Those streets are flooded. The only thing that can make things better is a waffle.
I was gonna say, and then you rise out of you open the door of your flooded basement. There is the Waffle House, just glowing,
with some butter,
a glowing Waffle House.
Cream.
Yeah.
All right,
I do want to say though that they have checked. The New York Times did go and check with the Waffle House in Rome, Georgia, and no one can remember this guy being teleported there. Nobody has ever laid eyes. His name is Greg Phillips. He's a top official at FEMA. And
they Men in Black the whole situation. They went in there and they erased everyone's memory, so they don't know. They don't remember.
Oh, I see. That's part of the divine intervention. They had to make sure no one else saw.
Can't. Yes.
I'm glad we're covering the important issues today.
But seriously, he is the head of FEMA's Office of Response and Recovery, okay? He has a budget of $300 million and 1,000 employees underneath him. He's in charge of responding to disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, fires, right? He, not only is he, a fan of all of these election conspiracy theories around the 2020 election, but he literally is saying that he was teleported in his car 50 miles to a Waffle House in Georgia.
I mean, at some point, that's just admitting to a DUI, right? Because there's no, right? Like, I couldn't remember an entire 50-mile drive. That might be, Tiger Woods might have some things to say about that.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. He's also like totally doubling down, this guy, and saying, teleporting is no fun and haters gonna hate. Like when he's exposed, but, about this, he's just, his response is haters gonna hate. So
I was gonna say, that kind of leads into the pattern of just like government officials. We've gone so far down this route of like, you can kind of just say something into truth, right? You can just kind of, as long as it's able to come out of my mouth, that's the reality. And I think that's kind of what's happening with these negotiations in Iran.
With my kids, I am Santa Claus.
Okay. So
right.
So you're saying we should treat the voters like kids? Come on.
Did you see how many eggs the Easter bunny put at my house last weekend? It was literally over.
You guys had a great visit from the bunny.
We did have a great visit. I'm sorry. I got to tell you a little bit about our egg situation at home. So there's no candy. There's no nothing in the eggs. They're just colored eggs. And then at the end, my father has decided, he's always the rule maker. And this is like, I don't know. I think he spends all year planning the rules for Easter. And this year, I think it's like, you got the most yellow eggs. Congratulations, you lose 10 points or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So this year, there's always a bunch of $1 bills and stuff. He introduced the wealth tax. And
Chad showed me a video.
I'll tell you what, 3 and 4-year-olds hate the wealth tax.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, speaking
of it.
Yeah, speaking of the Easter Bunny, I don't know if y'all saw that clip of Trump speaking at that Easter event at the White House, and he's right next to the Easter Bunny, and he's talking about the Iran war, and it's just so funny when they pan to the bunny, the guy in the bunny suit standing next to him, because it's just some cold, lifeless eyes looking like, why am I even here? Like, what?
That sounds hilarious. I didn't see that clip. But
Trump's Easter message kind of blew everybody's mind. And then Trump's message about, wanting to annihilate all of the civilization of Iran, that really did trigger people saying, like a lot of people saying, wait, get this guy out of the White House. Like 25th Amendment.
I think that one's pretty just blatantly not something you want to go on the record for.
I don't understand it. I don't know. I do play devil's advocate quite a bit, and even I was like, whoa, like, come on. You're president of the United States. You're going to talk about wiping out
just viewing that, and I think, we all know his whole strategy that he outlined in The Art of the Deal is, you push the boundaries so far, you push your negotiating end so far by making the most outlandish claim, and then the center of the best compromise becomes further in your direction. This is not a situation where that's going to work. Like, if you don't want to make one end of the deal the erasure of an entire civilization, that's you're blowing past so many norms, you're blowing past so many, just the historical context of that statement is way too far for any president to be made.
Conventional norms are part of Trump's calculus.
Exactly, and that's the problem. I think you got to have someone that understands those norms when it comes to leading the world's largest military that we've ever seen, because he could do that. That's the problem. He could. He could erase any civilization that he wanted right now, and he's actively threatening it. So not only has he made these threats and followed up on them.
We had other presidents that went into countries like Iraq.
Okay, but did they make the case to the American public and to our allies of why we needed to go into those? I think
they have weapons of mass destruction.
Well, that's the same thing Trump said. Why is the support for this war so much lower than?
I'm just saying it's like we're talking about norms. I'm just saying it's not abnormal. We've had people going to into wars.
Well, which president was threatening to just wipe out the entire country?
I already admitted. I said. I mean, come on, man. You at least don't.
Yeah, I think that's a step. Well, way too far. I think
that's maybe a jump too far. But
this morning, our Secretary of War said that that Trump is a president of peace. So just letting you know.
Well, in his defense, he had no wars his first term, and anyways.
He said a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. Next to the Easter Bunny.
I think you should publish a well-articulated piece on IVN.us. Which, by the way, we just got the USPTO just sent us our trademark. We are officially trademarked independent voter news.
Congratulations!
That's big.
So we are trademarked as independent.
Yeah,
voter
it's got to
news.
go through this little process or whatever. But we got notice that it's being published in their official thing, and it's going through the process.
All right.
Congratulations! Just in time for the president to send journalists to jail if they. Report something that he doesn't want them to say.
Come on.
I mean, that's what. No, he threatened to send the reporter to jail if they didn't give up the source who told them that there was the pilot still missing in Iran. That's what he threatened to do, which is arguably, I don't think that's good for freedom of the press. I think that might be.
Can we get back to voter ID or something?
All right.
There's 7,000 shows you can.
You're right.
Talk about Trump all day.
But we did want to really talk about voter ID and what we were trying to figure out, and what we were talking about yesterday when we were preparing for the show. Is this distinction that you're making, Chad, about
voter ID,
which why don't you explain it?
I'm gonna say this as simply as I possibly can.
Okay.
Voter ID. Everybody knows now it's an 80-20 issue. 80-20. 80% of people support voter ID. 20% don't.
So then how did it become a 50-50 issue?
Yeah. So I'm going to go through the whole thing. 80-20 issue. Washington, D.C. says, okay, we have 80%. Let's pack it with a bunch of stuff. Right now you have what's called a dirty voter ID bill. California, interesting situation. Very clean voter ID bill. The campaigns will treat them as if they're the same. But the reality is California clean, Washington, D.C. voter ID dirty. But will the voters of California see through and vote for the voter ID, or will they follow the political narrative that treats Washington and California as the same? That's to be seen.
And that's exactly right. People need to understand there's a difference between the voter ID bill that's in California and the voter ID bill that's been pushed through, attempted to be pushed through federally by Trump in Congress. These are completely different bills that, like you're saying, because it's an 80-20 issue, they've tried to cram all of this extra stuff, transgender restrictions, a whole bunch of other stuff into the federal bill, which is just unnecessary. And that's not the case in California.
And it doesn't matter what you think about those other issues and stuff too. It's just why do you need to have all the stuff that's irrelevant? And then on the voter ID, it's a lot stricter, right? Like you have issues where, okay, it's going to cause complications with women who have been married or using their maiden name or things like that. Like stuff in California is done very cleanly. It's a very low bar. It's saying, hey, let's just have some form of process of verification, but let's keep the bar low, but allow it to be verified.
Yeah. So I think
right?
let's outline. So what exactly happened? What does this new California bill add to the process that wasn't in there before?
Kara's the expert on this. She wrote a whole analysis of the two, which I thought was very well done. Good job, Kara.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have that going up soon. We want to add some stuff about our particular poll. But yeah, I mean, the story that I wrote definitely talks about how all voter ID laws are not the same. But I'll tell you what is the same is the way that the two major political parties in the country use the voter ID laws to get out their base vote. They don't have an interest in solving this issue, this 80-20 issue. They have, like so many other issues, they have the incentive and they have turned it into a Democrat versus Republican issue. So the Democrats say that there is no problem whatsoever with any kind of voter fraud, and therefore no need for this. And anybody who's trying to say that there should be voter ID is a voter suppressionist, right? And then on the Republican side, they go so far to say that fraud is rampant, and that, that illegal immigrants are voting in these elections and that are skewing the results and, leading to Democratic victories. That the only way that Democrats are winning is because there's this rampant voting by people who are not citizens. And there's no proof for that.
So I have to run through our poll because I don't understand. This goes back to like, okay, that's the top lines, right? But our poll explains why it doesn't happen. Okay, go into the crosstabs. It's like only 49%. It depends on how you ask the questions. So we ask the questions basically in a way to show why it doesn't actually get passed or why it's so divisive, even though it's an 80-20 issue, right? When you ask the question just without qualification, do you support voter ID? It's under 50%. It's just under 50%.
Right.
When you say, yeah, I support voter ID, but I don't trust Republicans to implement it, that's 20% of the electorate. Then when you say, I support voter ID, but I would need an independent authenticator, right? That's another like 17%. And then the rest of them, which are pretty much almost 100% Democrats, are the ones that say like the same as the open borders crowd, right? Like, no voter ID, none or none. That's like 20%, less than 20%, right? So that's where you get the 80-20 issue, right? But then when you look at those crosstabs, which you can find on IVN, we published them. That's cited by the New York Times. The journalists need to go in there and understand that is why it becomes divisive, because you need to understand those like 30% of the voters who are looking at things more deeply and looking at the nuance.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot more elements to it than you would think initially.
There's also like a lot of there's like every single state has a different voter ID law. Okay. And California, the one that they're like right now, California, you do not have to show your ID at all to go vote. Nothing. You don't have to show anything to go vote. And what the California law is asking for is that you show an ID. And if you don't have an ID, then this law would guarantee a free voter ID card to any eligible voter who asks for one. And it wouldn't require proof of citizenship to register, and it wouldn't penalize election officials, and it wouldn't, it would require audits. And so, California's what's going on the ballot is definitely more mellow than what just happened in Florida, for example. In Florida,
right.
It's like take the most draconian voter ID law that you can imagine, and then add 10 more steps onto that. In Florida though, it's interesting. It's like this really draconian law which requires you to bring like your marriage certificate if your name changed in order to vote, and it also goes backwards. So even if you are registered to vote, you're going to have to prove your citizenship in Florida to vote, but it's not going to be effective until January 1st of 2027. So like they went really far, but then, it's not going to affect these 2026 elections. So again, like they're using it to get out the vote, to get out their base voters, both sides.
Mm-hmm.
In this, what's going to be a very close, I would imagine, very contentious, high stakes 2026 midterm election. But,
right.
There's a lot of issues that the American voters support that are 80-20 issues. Voter ID is not the only one of them.
Like nonpartisanship.
Correct.
So Sean, on that note, I know we're running the clock here, but yep. Sean, you haven't even gotten to your roundup yet.
No, I haven't. And speaking of the California Voter ID Initiative, Reform California had reported late last week that about 18 counties have finished their signature verification process, and if the trends hold, about 82% of the signatures will end up being verified. So you're looking at about 1.1 million verified signatures, which is well more than initiative needs to qualify for the ballot. Also in California and Sacramento, you have a group that has emerged to bring ranked choice voting there, which follows closely after the LA Charter Review Commission had recommended ranked choice voting for those city elections. On the other side of that, though, in Eureka, you have them delaying implementation of ranked choice voting because local election officials say they need to update systems and get state certification. And usually the standard excuses for why you need to delay a voter-approved reform is happening there. I think one of the more interesting things is we actually got the break news on IVN this morning with in Idaho became the 25th state in the country to urge Congress to propose a constitutional amendment to allow Congress and state lawmakers to regulate money in politics as they see fit. You're talking about another 80-20 issue with voters,
there you go.
right?
That's the old American
issue,
promise, right?
90-10 issue.
That's American promise, right?
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
friend of the podcast, friend of America or Independent Voter podcast, American Promise. They're pushing for this.
You should bring Jeff Clements on to talk if he'll come on. He's
they're incredible. So I talked to the program manager a couple weeks ago. I did a feature piece on IVN about this, and they were saying that in any given week, from day to day, he may find himself in a different state capital. That's how busy they are lobbying these legislators, trying to get these resolutions passed, get Congress to notice it, because that's their goal. First, start off with the states to go on record and say, hey, we want to be able to regulate and dictate our own campaign finance laws, but we need Congress to propose this constitutional amendment and pass it so we can do this, because you have this decades long of court precedent that has made it very difficult for states to pass any sort of campaign finance.
Well, we should make sure we're touching in more with them. Those American Promise is the real deal. Jeff Clements the real deal. They're a very good organization, very smart the way they're approaching it. They actually have a strategy to get something accomplished. It's a long-term, very difficult strategy, but there's an end goal where we know in the world of these things, a lot of these organizations get created to perpetuate themselves, right? And I'm not talking about anybody in particular, right? But there's a lot of good ones. And American Promise is one of those that they just keep advancing the ball and they have an agenda. They believe in what they're doing. And you know what? I think they're going to be successful, right?
And I think what really helps them is that they don't get involved in elections. They're not in the business of endorsing candidates or getting involved in partisan politics. They just have this one goal of getting this amendment passed. That is their goal, and they're working very hard at doing it. And I think it's very commendable what American Promise is doing. Now, an interesting story that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is out of Colorado. There is a group there that is pushing an initiative that would ban mid-cycle gerrymandering. We're still on this. We're not going to escape the mid-cycle gerrymandering stuff. And so there's this group that is pushing this initiative to ban it. Colorado already has an independent redistricting commission. However, there is a group that is Democrat aligned that is trying to push their own initiative for the ballot that would pass a new congressional map, much like Prop 50, to change some Republican-leaning districts to lean Democrat. And I think one of the more startling things about that effort is that one proposal they have is to take the Independent Redistricting Commission from the state constitution and make it a state statute. And I wonder why they would want to do that.
So from constitution to statute, so they can get rid of it, right?
Right.
So that the legislature can get rid of it.
So the legislature could suspend, alter, or eliminate it altogether. So it's crazy.
That's fascinating. Hey, on the American Promise, have they done California already?
California's already passed. So again, half the states, Idaho was the 25th state, so half of states have signed on to this type of resolution to have Congress pass this. It includes
and how
California,
many
Montana,
need to get? How
you
many
need three-quarters, right?
Yeah,
well, you need three-quarters to ratify an amendment. Yep.
Okay, so
that's 38.
They're at 50.
States.
2/3 of the way there.
Yep.
Yeah.
How exciting.
I know my math.
Yeah, shout out to any of these groups that are involved in the granular work of reform, really doing things that actually will move the needle, even if it's going to take a long, long, long time. They I really do admire their focus, and I admire all the groups that are doing, have specific things that they're doing, that they're committed to, and that they're not just constantly changing what they're all about, right?
Yeah.
Depending on where their money is coming from.
Or what the issue of the day they think they can raise money on is. But
exactly.
I know we're getting to the end of our show. I think this is we should do a little bit deeper dive into American Promise and reach out and let our readers know what they're up to. It's a very good organization. But, you can find out more about organizations like this by listening to our show. Going on to IVN. I think Sean's working on a couple articles about, resources for independents, organizations they ought to know about. So follow along. And then Ethan continues to pump out these social media that are getting, as you put it, punching way above our weight.
Exactly.
Millions of viewers.
Tell us a little bit more. Tell us a little bit more, Ethan, about what's happening out there.
That's what we do. Yeah. I mean, any type of...
I try to wrap it up and Kara just keeps...
Yeah,
I love you guys too much to want this to be over. I enjoy your company every Wednesday. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about social media is, it can cause a lot of divisiveness. But the other thing about it is that it can bring together like-minded people that maybe don't know that they are like-minded. So a lot of what we try and focus on posting is stuff about, this it's showing how the two-party system is actually causing problems for Americans, right? It's not any one side that's the issue. It's actually we should unite against the system that has been created by these people. So I know today I've actually got a good clip of Chris Christie. He's talking about, there's all these in Congress
anti-Trumper guys.
No, I'm saying in there he's talking about how Congress in general has refused to call out these guys. Jesse Ventura.
He left office with approval rating in the teens. Right?
But he's willing to speak out now against Congress, right? That's what we want. Anyways, maybe I shouldn't have brought up Chris Christie specifically, but my point is that our content is designed to bring people together and not push them apart, and that's what's most important.
Absolutely. And also to let people know that they're not crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's our dysfunctional system. There's a reason that we're experiencing the madness that we're experiencing today in our politics. And, it's because this two-party system, entrenched two-party system, is incentivized not to solve any problems, they're incentivized
to maintain
to fight.
The status quo.
And to maintain the status quo.
Or maybe we are crazy, but we're just saying that's okay. I'm allowed to have a different viewpoint than Kara and Ethan and Sean and stuff, and then we can still get along and then actually think, wow, that is the whole point of democracy, right? It's not to yell at each other and go in a corner and say, I'll never work with you. It's to have the discussion back and forth and say, oh, Kara, I disagree with you. That doesn't mean I think you're evil or stupid or anything else. It just means I have a different viewpoint, and let's try to persuade each other or change our mind if we get...
We're like the four musketeers of civil discourse on this podcast.
There we go.
I don't know about that. It's getting a big head over here.
Okay.
It's great to see you.
Yeah.
All right, for all our listeners hanging on for this last, it's like the credits scrolling and then you show one more scene. Thanks for joining us. Remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, on YouTube. Visit IVP, Independent Voter Project. If you are feeling generous and want to make a contribution, go to ivn.us if you want to know what's going on in this independent voter world. And join us next time.
Thank you.
This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by OLAS Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
OLAS Media.